Welcome back to Epistemics. Today, once again, I'm joined by Jerry Kochlan. He was on the show last time and we discussed the history of monotheism, and we're going to be continuing that topic today, going into a bit more detail, exploring a few other areas in the world. Now, before we start that, if you guys haven't already, make sure to subscribe and click the notification bell just so you're up to date with all of the most recent content that I'm posting, and we will continue to post on this channel, God willing. That being said, Jerry, welcome to the show. Assalamu alaikum. Wa alaikum salam. Peace be upon you.
Indeed.
So,
okay, to kick off, I just want to say, for anyone who hasn't watched the previous show, you should watch it first. And any names you hear mentioned, whether of people or concepts that I don't explain, is because we've already hit on in the previous episode. Yeah. So we're time constrained here. So what I touch on, we're only going to touch briefly. Yeah, there's loads more digging to do, but we are time constrained, so we'll hammer straight into it. Yeah, inshallah. So basically, we spoke last time about how there is a narrative behind the Darwinist evolutionist theory regarding development of religion. Yeah.
yes.
So what we want to do now is shed some light on that narrative.
Okay.
Yeah, where it came from, how, when, its proponents and its opponents.
Right, so that was, if I remember correctly, last time when I asked you about why you think the predominant view moved over to thinking that it was polytheism and then developed into monotheism. That's what you said, that there was this Darwinian influence that came into it.
Massive.
So that's what you're going to give us a bit more detail on now. That's brilliant. Because I think that's needed, bro, because I think there were some questions regarding this as well. People wanted some more information on this.
And those of you who have asked questions in the comments, we haven't replied because everything will be replied to in time, either here or elsewhere.
Okay.
But that's why we haven't replied, if you're wondering. Following on from the thinkers who proposed that mankind went from animist, fetishist, polytheist up to monotheist, one of the main proponents of this, if not the main proponent, was an Englishman named Edward B. Tylor.
Right.
He was a Quaker. He lived from 1832 to 1917. He was an anthropologist and actually the founder of cultural anthropology. He had a theory that mankind went through a worldwide evolution in every stage, and that it was pretty similar everywhere worldwide. He divided mankind into three categories. Now, these are his words, not ours, but we have to quote him as he says.
Right.
Savage, barbaric, and civilized.
Right.
Savage, meaning fetishist, animist.
Okay.
Yeah. Barbaric, meaning polytheist or henotheist. And civilized, monotheist, and upwards from there.
Interesting.
And he was the one who reintroduced the term animism into academia.
Okay.
Yeah. So he has a quite extensive body of work that he has written himself. Now, we'll go straight to the animism concept. He came up with 14 characteristics and abilities of the human soul. Now tell me, where can you get evidence for characteristics of the human soul? We're talking empirical evidence.
Characteristics of the human soul.
Yeah.
You can't really have
empirical
so evidence.
He cooked these ideas up in a university room or in his office or somewhere with no evidence whatsoever. Yeah, he says the idea of, I won't go into the characteristic, maybe we will on another show, but not now. The idea of soul was reinforced as savages noticed their reflections in water or even their own shadows, apparent extensions of themselves. Dreaming, they saw themselves in places where upon waking they knew they had not been. Ages later, says Tylor, a new phenomenon emerged in some human societies. Yeah. So after they applied this spiritism and characteristics of soul to themselves, to better understand the world around them, they implanted spirits in rocks, trees, plants, etc. Eventually, like we mentioned last time, these spirits became personalities. Yeah. So they stratified the classes of their so-called gods. Yeah. Just like human aristocracies ruling over peasants suggested aristocracies of gods ruling over run-of-the-mill souls and spirits. Thus, polytheism in Tylor's model emerged from spiritism. Still later, some human aristocracies experienced further metamorphoses, One aristocrat was fortunate enough to be exalted above his peers as a monarch, a king. You see where we're going with this? Yeah. So he says they basically they got this concept after applying this concept to the polytheism. And he says what we would call prophets, or what someone else claims to be a prophet, are just someone who emerged after polytheism and pushed the idea that one God is more supreme than all the others. Okay. Now, so he said monotheism marks the final stage in religion's evolution, not man's evolution.
Sure.
Yeah, but religion had now reached the end of a dead street, according to him. And he says, was it not more sensible simply to trust in the evolutionary process itself? Anything which could create spirits, gods, and even a god must be greater than they. Now, Tyler's theory was rebutted by Wilhelm Schmidt, the German scholar who did the 4,500 page work based purely on evidences and field reports from people who've gone and lived with tribes all over the world, gained their trust, learned their language, and learned their beliefs and their stories. Yeah. And this is Schmidt, sorry, I'm quoting from Schmidt here. A notable proof of the extent to which Tyler's theory influenced the world is the fact that it was accepted by a number of prominent students of ethnology and religion almost without alteration. Such unqualified acceptance is to be found in, and then Schmidt goes on to list 39 European and American scholars who endorsed Tyler's theory.
Wow.
Yeah, now this is in the 4,500 page book, okay? Yeah. The reference it's in German anyway, so if anyone wants to translate it, then go ahead. Good luck. So, included in the list was Scotsman Andrew Lang, who was Tyler's direct student. Early in his career, Lang championed Tyler's theory in its struggle against the nature myth theory. Yeah, now just to give you a brief overview of Andrew Lang, to see what kind of scholarship you're dealing with here. Yeah, he was a Scotsman, 1844 to 1912. He was an anthropologist, originally a defender of Tyler's theory, though he completely flipped around. Yeah, he has a massive library himself. He studied the Greek and Roman classics, poetry, ancient and modern, religious history, and in particular field reports from Australia regarding the beliefs of Aboriginal tribes. And tons of them, tons and tons of these reports came back. So eventually he reversed his position based upon the evidence coming to him from people who were in the field.
Right.
Yeah, and he realized that actually mankind did have a form of primitive monotheism. He didn't agree with Schmidt on everything, and he didn't disagree with Tyler on everything. And he still, out of respect for his teacher, Tyler, said that Tyler's case for the animism theory was better than the others, even though he openly disagreed with it.
Yeah, let me just ask you, I think you clarified, but if you could just clarify a little more, why did his theory catch so much popularity?
We're going there.
Okay, we're still not there. Because what you've said so far, I'm thinking, there's not much there. It's just an idea, like you said, concocted up in maybe a classroom somewhere or a lab.
Because Schmidt's body of evidence wasn't compiled at the time Tyler came out with his theory. So it's kind of understandable why people might have latched onto Tyler's theory.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
And before Schmidt's evidence came and presented, Tyler's theory gave birth to loads of little children theories.
Right.
And we're coming to that anyway. Yeah. Evolution, with each apparent breakthrough achieved on the basis of an evolutionary framework, evolutionists became extremely vocal in predicting the eventual ultimate triumph of evolution over theism. Yeah, but one of them, he was quite honest about what would happen here. He's a Christian clergyman called E. D. Pressance in his book A Study of Origins. Our aspirations after a higher world are, to use the figure of one of this school, but as dead leaves flung aloft into the air, which fall back upon the hand that flung them. Everything is to be reduced to energy, ever transmuted, but ever the same. And even though he was one of these, he was a Christian clergyman, my mistake. He labelled this as pure fanaticism. And he says, I have endeavoured to be at once impartial and clear in stating the views held by those whom I differ. I have always borne in mind that a man is often much better than his theories. So he's politely saying, your theories are very weak, you've got no evidence, but I'm not going to hold it against you a lot personally. So he critiqued Tyler's theory philosophically, and others critiqued it as well, but they didn't have strong evidence, but they were leaning towards the original monotheism.
Okay.
Then boom, 11 years later in 1898, Tyler's favourite pupil allowed himself to read a missionary report. And it went against what Tyler proposed. Now, obviously, one report is not going to have much of an effect on someone.
Yes.
Yeah? But he realised these reports were coming in again and again and again and again about multiple Australian tribes who held on to a belief in one supreme being. They had fallen into anthropomorphism and shirks some more than others, but most of them still didn't give up the idea of one supreme being.
You got to hand it to the Christian missionaries, man. They did a lot of work as far as...
It's kind of mind-blowing.
Because if they hadn't done this, this information wouldn't wouldn't reach us today. We wouldn't have this.
It's absolutely mind-blowing what they've done and what they've collected, you know. So Lang, he didn't hold back being honest, and he had pressed his attack on his teacher's theory, but he was never rude to his teacher. He had the height of respect for him, even though he disagreed. Yeah. And in the work of A.W. Howitt, who was also an evolutionist, but little did he know that collecting all these, he was an Australian evolutionist government official, collecting all these reports stood to blow away what he believed in.
Wow. He let go of the...
He didn't. He didn't. But his work was one of the main factors for Lang. Yeah. Right. Lang says in his book, The Making of Religion, the startling discoveries of A.W. Howitt concerning the supreme being of the Southeast Australian tribes, and an information given by Miss Langloh Parker concerning other Australian tribes, and making use of the facts of the Bushmen, Hottentots, Zulu, and a whole load of tribal names that you won't know. Lang tried to call this to public attention and question Tyler's theory and others. So he started to throw doubts, And after this, Tyler could not be induced to speak, despite Lang's direct challenges to him. It was Wilhelm Schmidt, previously mentioned, who, appalled by the lack of recognition given to Lang, threw himself into one of the most extensive research projects ever undertaken by one man. And that's no exaggeration, refer previous video.
Yeah, and I definitely encourage people to check that out if they haven't.
This is where the answers to your questions are coming, Before its downfall, Tyler's theory had inspired certain scholars to apply his ideas in other fields. One would think that the refutation of the mother theory would cause its offspring in other fields to decline as well. This has not been the case. This has not been the case. Even though the theory was accepted as being refuted, it filtered into academia and mainstream, and it's still there. Wow. It's still there. Yeah. These theories managed to distance themselves from the original theory. So when the original theory got the chop, they survived. Wow. Once again, we are indebted to Wilhelm Schmidt for pointing out one such insidious connection, the connection between Tyler's theory and liberal theology. Liberal theology is basically a theology that has no firm grounding, and it accepts whatever comes to it, and it alters itself. Yeah. Schmidt also exposed that the theory of a man called J. Wellhausen, in support of the evolutionist theory, is based upon an anthropological theory which most anthropologists no longer endorse. Now, we'll have to keep this brief, but this didn't just end up in liberalism. It ended up in white supremacism. It ended up in Nazism. And it ended up in general racism. Yeah.
So before you move on, bro, you've given us some heavy information. You've quoted loads of resources, loads of discussions, loads of back and forth that took place throughout history. Can you just just for so I can understand this and everyone watching can understand this. Can you just summarize literally within like 2-3 sentences what the whole point of what you just
we'll use Tyler as the figurehead for the evolutionists. We'll use Lang as the figurehead for the original monotheism.
Okay.
The evolutionists, with no evidence, and anyone who wants to check out Tyler's theories can see how erratic and bizarre some of them are, went along with the idea that mankind started on the basis of him having his own soul, going from animism to fetishism to polytheism to monotheism, and that mankind's morals improved along the way.
So they evolved.
Everything evolved.
Of human life evolved.
His whole thing was everything evolved altogether.
And that's what they want to substantiate anyway from their perspective.
Lang originally was his best student, and he agreed with this entirely. Until he got field reports from the Americas.
Actual evidence, basically.
Actual evidence. Over and over again from Australia, from Africa, from the Americas, India as well, and other places as well. Even very, very remote places, which we've also discussed. And based on the field reports of the people on the ground, he had to change his view.
Yeah, he had to let go
and he campaigned to try and tell others. Now, having readily accepted Tyler's theory, without challenging it, some people grudgingly accepted Lang's theory, even though it was backed by the evidence.
Yes.
So you can see how deep this goes. The rabbit hole goes way too deep for one episode.
And you also said that there was offshoots to that original theory, which survived.
Nietzsche.
Yes.
Yeah, some communists, white supremacists, and in particular Nazis were absolutely venomous opponents of the idea of an original monotheism. Because they took it one step further. Yeah, the evolutionists were saying atheism and westernization and the Europeans are at the forefront now.
Yes.
And the Germans said, okay, well, we're at the head of you. Yeah, the Germanic race being the forefront of the European. Yeah, it will blow your mind.
Into many different avenues.
It will absolutely blow your mind. And I've actually thought we could get more done, but
that's fine. What we're going to do, Jerry, what I'm going to suggest is you do your original as we discussed. You do the original foundational points in this episode, and then the next episode we get to we start traveling across the world again, basically.
Okay, so what I'll do is I'll leave it there.
Okay.
Because to go into even the beginning of the foundations is going to take time.
Let's do it as a separate
time we
episode.
Don't have, but inshallah we'll get there.
Yeah, I think this is,
and it's very, very interesting. Believe me.
Yeah, and I think
believe me, I've been mind blown while I've researched.
The way you've summarized it, it's and the way you've given us those resources has been brilliant.
And by the way, we've seen your questions.
Yes.
And I've seen some of the videos posted as rebuttals. I'm going to be honest with you. It's not even worth rebutting them, because you haven't provided sources or evidence for most of it, but we will in time anyway.
Yes.
But please at least come with a source, come with evidences. Come with something solid,
This is brilliant, Jerry. Brilliant.
Now,
thank you so much.
We'll dive in. Sorry to interrupt you.
No problem.
We dive into
I thought we were wrapping up.
No.
Okay, that's brilliant.
We have 15 minutes?
Yeah, we have about 10 minutes. We're about 10 minutes.
We'll dive into some of the evidences from the Australian tribes, why this influenced Andrew Lang to change his position. He says in The Making of Religion that of all races now extant, the Australians are probably lowest in culture. These are his words, not mine. And like the fauna of the continent, are nearest to Tyler's primitive model. They have not got metals, bows, pottery, agriculture, nor fixed houses. No traces of higher culture have anywhere been found above or in the soil of the continent. Now, why is he mentioning this? Because there are two theories, two rebuttals from evolutionists that they tried to say. They say they got the concept of a supreme being from the Christians. Again, that's not even worth rebutting. But some of them said, they had a higher society, which devolved, and remnants remained, but like he just said, there's absolutely no sign or evidence of their higher society anywhere.
So this is almost as Sabur likes to say, this is pretty much storytelling in a way, isn't it?
Yes, absolute storytelling.
It's you're making up things to just fit a particular outlook or a view, without any substantial evidence.
Yeah, the evidence is actually against you. Now I'm going to have to summarize again for time. Like I said, many of these tribes, they fell into shirk and they fell into anthropomorphism to different degrees, but they maintained the Supreme Spirit is one. That he rewards good, he punishes. His name is too sacred to be spoken except in whispers. Now, this is common in many cultures. Yeah. And they even kept knowledge of the Supreme Being to the initiated and the priestly class.
Right.
This is also common in other cultures. Yeah. But the farther back you go in time, the more you come to the idea that they believed in one Supreme Being, all-knowing, eternal creator, eventual judge of mankind, and they never considered the other beings they worshipped even close. Now I'm going to give you one more example of someone who did a U-turn. It's a lady called Katie Langloh Parker.
She was originally in the evolutionist camp.
She was an anthropologist herself, but she had an advantage. She was a colonial kid born in Australia, and she grew up with the tribes. She was highly educated as well and has her own body of works.
So she's within the field itself.
Yeah, but because she was white, the Australians, the tribes didn't see her as a threat. They didn't give any info to their own women, and even to men, only to the few. She actually got further than the Aboriginal women and the Aboriginal men.
Very interesting.
Yeah, and she says, having fully believed the anthropological research of the time and acquainted with Mr. Herbert Spencer, who was an offshoot of Tyler. Yeah, he ran with all Tyler's theories. She said, of the origin of religion and in the worship of ancestral spirits, what I learned from the natives surprised me and shook my faith in Mr. Spencer's theory, which with it seemed incompatible. And she eventually reversed all her beliefs and has her own full body of work called the Ula'i tribe, including their monotheistic tendencies. Yeah, and she's actually collected, she became fluent in their language, done decades of research, and has collected many of their poems, stories, religious beliefs, etc., etc. She has a massive body of work herself. So she went the same way as Mr. Lang, you know.
So polytheism to monotheism was the original view she held, and then...
Yeah, she swallowed it because of the books that she read.
From seeing what was actually happening on the ground in reality.
Just like many, many others. Many, many others went the same way. How long have we got?
About 2 or 3 minutes to wrap up this episode.
We can just go quickly to some Polynesian tribes who had similar beliefs to the Australian tribes. They didn't depart knowledge of the Supreme Being to anyone but the elite class.
Yeah.
And 3 references here are E.S. Craighill-Handy in his book Polynesian Religion, E. Traeger in his book The Maori Race, and E. Best, Some Aspects of Maori Myth and Religion, is where all this comes from. He speaks about one missionary who went to question an old priest on the subject of the Supreme Being. He politely refused any information and referred him to a priest who happened to be 100 miles away.
Wow.
Obviously, he didn't go, and he had kind of got the feeling that if he did, he would just get the same thing again anyway.
Yes.
Yeah, and even when he spoke to other Maoris, they said, look, we cannot talk about the Supreme Being. And they gave excuses like, this is no place in which to speak of solemn things. Yeah, but after a bit of digging in Hawaii as well, they come to the conclusion that there is a Supreme Being. Some of them use the name Eo, and one ancient Maori teacher said, you will now be quite clear. There is one Lord, one God, one Spirit, in whom is vested peace and life. Death was cast out from the heavens to this world. This exalted being is referred to by names which translate as He of the Hidden Face, the great God, the exalted of heaven, the sacred knower of all things, the water of life of all things, the foundation of all things. And the farther back you go in their tradition, it's like all the ancestors and the spirits are utterly disregarded, and the prayers are directed to one Supreme Being.
Amazing.
In some way, shape or form also.
Bro, just to wrap up, I asked you this question the other day, because the more you're researching this, and every now and then when I ask you something about it, what seems to be coming across is that these tribes or these ancient people were very secretive of their beliefs in God, and they wouldn't just give it away so easily.
Yes.
And that intrigued me, and one of the ponderings I came across and I shared with you found quite interesting, was that maybe it's because they had a history of people taking the original pure teachings and disrupting them and destroying them, possibly that they were so secretive. And do you think there's any other reasons why they were so secretive about their beliefs, that they didn't just give it away straight away to the world?
I haven't dug into it yet,
Okay.
but that could be one reason.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just always interesting.
one
Very
reason.
interesting. Anyway.
It could also be the case that upon first contact,
Yeah.
they don't really want to talk to this invader
Possibly.
until they know and within their own tribes, it's a kind of way of applying a caste system.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the knowledge is for the initiated,
Yeah.
the elites, the rulers, which means that the rest of them become like workers or drones to an extent. But this is
Okay.
just a theory.
Yeah. Okay, Jerry. I think that's brilliant, bro. We can wrap up there.
Okay.
Thank you for coming on.
No
So,
problem, bro.
guys, if you watch this, remember, make sure to subscribe and click the notification bell. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Again, your questions, and we'll be doing many more videos. We're probably going to record a few more videos today, continuing this journey of the history of monotheism throughout the world. And thank you guys for watching. Until next time, take care.